So help me out, Jennifer Shen. You're the pathologist. You're the forensic specialist. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. That was an excellent rundown of the evidence that we would look for. There could be quite a bit of evidence that would help link someone to this crime. It's hard to say. And you covered many of those things, but we would certainly be looking for fingerprints on those surfaces that you mentioned, and we'd be looking for touch DNA. I want to concentrate for a second on the cartridge cases. So it depends on what type of weapon this was, but there are several shots. There are likely firearms evidence at that scene. And one of the things that's super interesting about forensics is over the last 5 or 6 years, we have advanced so much that you can find DNA on almost anything. And you can find DNA on fired cartridge cases, which seems like you couldn't, but we can do it. And so what we would do then is collect those cartridge cases and we would analyze them for DNA. Because if there is DNA present, you may be able to link that to someone if they've conducted a previous crime of some sort and were put into the DNA database. In addition to that, you're right, we would take those cartridge cases or the bullets, the missiles, and we would put them into a national firearms database. For using microscopic little marks on those cartridge cases, you can compare them to other shootings from other places. Because if you can connect shootings, one scene to another, you might be able to collect evidence from one scene and another that together would give you an idea who the suspect is if you didn't have enough evidence from just one scene alone. So there's a lot of possibilities here.
To Jennifer Shen, forensic pathologist, joining me, former director, San Diego Police Department Crime Lab at jenshenforensics.com. Jennifer, how difficult would it be to disguise that vehicle? We haven't been told if the vehicle was outfitted to look like a FedEx truck or not. But that VIN number, the VIN, that every car is like a fingerprint and it's embedded into the car, that can be changed out. That vehicle could be at a chop shop right now.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I was actually wondering what kind of vehicle the person arrived in. To your point earlier, a neighborhood like this is going to have an exceptional number of video cameras, surveillance systems. So there will be so many tools that can be used to help find that car. And I don't know, I'm listening to how this all went down. I wonder if it seems a little erratic, the shooting, not really completing. I don't know what job this person was trying to complete, but in and out and away, I don't know that I think there's a good chance that they could find the car based upon the surveillance videos, and after finding the car, then be able to track down this person. You are capable of disguising vehicles. You can disguise the license plate number. As you said, you can change out the VIN number. You can do the whole chop shop routine, but that's pretty advanced. And I don't know if that's the situation in this case, if this person is that advanced.
Or just scrape off the VIN and burn the thing. Forensic pathologist, help us illuminate this case with your knowledge.
Well, I've seen so many crime scenes over the years, and it always surprises me what people do when committing crimes. So I'm still looking at this case and wondering, because the person came to the front door, first of all, if the target was the judge, that this person would have to get through 2 men in the doorway. And I think once the door is open and you're faced with not one but 2, essentially grown men, and you open fire, to at that point in a neighborhood like that go through the foyer and then into the house to find the judge, that would be a pretty gutsy maneuver, because you've already alerted everyone to your presence. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I agree with the investigators who would say that it's all options are on the table, because you just have no idea what was going on in that person's head. There is definitely some level of sophistication here, but it's not that high of a level of sophistication from what I've seen, because it was at 5 o'clock and it was in daylight and it was in a low crime neighborhood and it was somewhere with a lot of surveillance. And it doesn't look like, unless the sun was the actual target, it doesn't look like the mission was accomplished. And I think with the forensics that are going to be found at that scene, it's highly, highly likely they're going to catch this person. And it's just going to be fascinating to see what the actual motive was here.
When you say the forensics at the scene make it highly likely the perp will be caught, what do you mean by that? What forensics?
Well, I think that, again, we talked about surveillance. I think that there's going to be so much surveillance, it's going to be easy to track this person in and out of the neighborhood. And then my hope would be that there is some DNA and some, I mean, it depends on who this person is. If they've never really done anything like this before, we may not have any databases that have anything in them that would be useful. You have to have a person in a database in order for DNA to make a difference for you. Same with the weapon. If it's a weapon that has never been used before, it would be difficult to come up with any clues. But touch DNA is amazing these days. Fingerprints, certainly most people are in a fingerprint database somewhere, and the surveillance is just going to be absolutely key, in my opinion.
Explain to our listeners what you mean by touch DNA.
Well, way back in the day, you needed like a pool of blood or semen or spit or something you could actually physically see in order to get enough DNA to develop a profile to compare to someone. But in the last decade or so, the techniques are so sensitive that now, as long as your perpetrator has handled something, not just barely brushed it, but actually handled it. So, for instance, a screwdriver or something at a scene that was used to wedge open a window or something, there would be enough contact from the person who handled that screwdriver that DNA would be left on it, that enough of it, even though you can't see it and it doesn't come from a body fluid, you can develop a DNA profile and put it in the database and get a hit. So, if you left a hat or a shirt at the scene, that's the other thing, is that oftentimes when people are running away in a high panic from a scene, they drop things. Everything they drop can be related back to them, either through investigation of where did they buy it or what is it, but also through DNA, which you get from the sweat, fingerprints, sometimes dog hair, or something that can compare, that can give you enough evidence to connect that thing back to the perpetrator.